Hey guys, Will here. So one of the age-old questions when it comes to sim racing is, does more expensive gear make you a faster and more consistent driver? Now this is a topic that we have talked about a couple of times in various different contexts over the last 18 months or so that we've been doing sim racing content on this channel. But what I wanted to do today was something a little bit different. As you would have seen in the last couple of videos, I've had these sneaky HE Ultimate pedals sitting in the background behind me. Now I picked these up for a very, very good price secondhand off a local Facebook group, and very excited to get them installed on the rig today. Now, of course, I will be doing a full review of these pedals in the future, but to be honest with you guys, I want to spend some time with these before I start putting together any video content, going through the features and benefits and things like that, because there's a lot of detail to go through. There's what seems like an infinite amount of adjustment, and I really think that this is a product that warrants spending some time with it before sort of sharing all that stuff with you guys so I can really get my head around it all. Now, there are a couple of really great reviews out there already. Barry from Sim Racing Garage actually did a video on these 5 years ago now that I was watching today, where he went through all the minute details. So I definitely recommend watching that one. But yeah, once my 80/20 rig arrives, hopefully in a couple of weeks time, I will definitely get this all set up and we'll do a proper review for you guys as well. But the focus of today's video is to hopefully answer, or at least give you some insight into exactly how much difference it makes having a set of pedals that cost something like 2,200 Australian dollars compared to something that costs about $700 or $800 Australian. So these pedals here that I've been using for the last 18 months now do have the damper kit as well as the performance kit installed, and that definitely has made a difference. And when I bought these, I was really, really happy with them. I was driving primarily Formula cars. I was playing F1 2019 pretty much exclusively back then, and I was actually looking for something that had a relatively short throw, and these fit the bill perfectly. I found them really to be quite consistent with F1 2019, but as I've sort of expanded and diversified the range of cars that I've been driving, I have found them to be a little bit limiting just because of the reduced travel. Now that's not so much of a problem without the performance kit, but with the performance kit installed, it really does restrict the amount of travel. And you can see here, even just pushing down on it, and you'll see in the footage when I'm driving, there's really not a whole lot of range of movement there, probably only about an inch and a half with the performance kit installed. So I'm hoping that having a little bit of extra travel, despite the extra weight of these pedals, will actually allow me to have a little bit more modulation in my braking and be able to pull some more consistent and faster lap times. So what I've done is I've done 7 laps around Bathurst in iRacing in a Porsche 911 GT3, which is a notoriously difficult car to drive under braking. It tends to break away in the rear, and I actually abandoned driving it last season because I was just finding it too difficult. So it's going to be really interesting to see how I go. I've recorded 7 laps with these pedals before I pulled them off the rig, including all the VRS telemetry data as well, which we'll be taking a look at. And then we're going to get these installed on the rig, and we're going to go for a drive, see how long it takes me to adapt to the new pedals, and then see how much faster and more consistent I am, if at all, with these pedals installed. So let's get stuck straight into it. Alright, so let's start off. I'll show you the fastest lap that I did out of the 7 laps that I did with the V3s around Bathurst here. So we'll look at the data from all 7 laps a little bit later on, but no need to include the entire thing in the video, otherwise the video will be hours long. But what I want you to pay attention to here is just the amount of travel primarily in the pedal. You can see I'm pushing down now. My foot's kind of curling over the top of it a little bit as well, which makes it look a little bit more than it is. But you can see I'm sort of pushing down on the pedal, and what I'm feeling is that I'm reaching the maximum deflection. And remember as well that these are the pedals that I've been using for the last 18 months as well. So this is what I'm completely used to. But you can see there's not a whole lot of modulation using. Watch as I approach the turn here. So you can see I'm pushing in, I'm slowly lifting off, but I'm not really making any adjustments at all. Now, that is generally the way you do want to drive. You don't want to be having to make too many adjustments. But what I find when I'm driving with these pedals is that there's not a whole lot of scope for adjustment there. So even with the linearity adjusted in iRacing, which you can use to fine tune the full scale deflection and how you can modulate within that, you just kind of feel like there's not a whole lot of room to move around there. So you're either kind of at 100% or you're at nothing. So it's not like, it's unfair to say that it feels like an on-off switch, and I'm certainly not being critical of these pedals because I've absolutely loved them over the last 18 months. But I definitely feel like that's the area where they're kind of lacking a little bit. And you can see again, I'm lifting off here, but I just don't have a lot of scale for movement here. So let's just watch the rest of the lap through. I won't speak over it, and you can just sort of see how things play out. So I'll bring the lap to a close and then take you on board for my very first drive with the HE Ultimates. Alright, so pedals are installed. Now we had to reinforce the pedal plate a little bit with some bricks underneath it just to stop the flex, because obviously these being a 200 kilo load cell, they're a little bit overrated for the rig that we're in at the moment. So hence again why I'm not going to do a full review until it's installed on the 8020 rig. Now other little things to notice as well, I was able to fix a little bit of squeaking that I had, remembering that these pedals are second hand, so it's certainly not a complaint against the HE pedals. But for those of you who are experiencing squeaking with these pedals, a little bit of lithium grease on all the little joints seems to have dealt with that issue. A little bit of squeakiness in the brake maybe still, but you know, that's more just in the squishiness of the pads, I think, rather than the joints themselves. But everything feels really nice. I made a few little fine adjustments, and as I mentioned at the start of the video, there's a massive scope of adjustment in these pedals, and obviously once I've had some experience and I've been able to sort of tweak things to my personal preference a little bit more, I'll run you through all that in more detail. But for now, I've managed to adjust it so that it feels like it's got quite a massive amount of throw there, and you can see there with my foot, the initial bite is kind of like a real car. So you push on the little bit there, and it kind of takes up the slack. It's not completely floppy or anything like that. It just feels like, you know, you're taking up the slack and you can kind of ride it on the pressure point there. And it'll be interesting to see how that sort of translates on track with the pedals calibrated as well. But you can see I'm pushing pretty hard there, but then when I push really hard, it really goes all the way through. So rather than sort of the V3 pedals with the performance kit had probably about that much travel. So from there to about there at maximum deflection, whereas these ones you can see I can push almost twice as far there if I really get into it. So that should give me a lot of extra scope for modulation. Now we're not going to be talking about the clutch much in this video because we're not driving a car that has a clutch, but I can tell you that feels really nice as well. A little bit tighter at the setting I have it at the moment than what the V3s felt, but we'll again review that later on. The throttle with the damper feels really good as well, but let's head out on the track and get driving here, and we can talk about the initial impressions a little bit more. So one of the things I found with the V3s, I had actually had my damper on the throttle for a little while there, as was recommended by a lot of you guys, and I found that it felt really nice, but even on the minimum setting there was still a little bit of sort of lift-off hesitation, so I felt like I lost a little bit of control. But I don't feel that to be so much the case with these, so let's see whether that ends up being a thing. But yeah, it springs back really nicely. It's funny because cars don't have a dampened throttle most of the time, but this feels really, really nice. I really feel like they've nailed that sort of mechanical feeling that you get. So that's really good. Now, what you guys are really interested in though is the brakes, I'm sure. So we'll talk about that some more. Just sort of getting the feel for things here. Obviously we're on cold tires as well, but what I'm noticing straight away as I try not to crash into walls here on cold tires is the ability, like I was saying before, you can ride the brakes a lot more easily, I think. So you can kind of sit on that initial pressure point where you start to feel the more heavy resistance against your foot, and then modulate from there. So just want to get heat into these tires so that I can drive a little bit quicker. But I also want to share the initial impressions with you guys as well, so it's a little bit awkward. I don't want to do a couple of laps and then come back. I want to actually take you along for the ride here. So let's see how it feels at the end of the straight here, see how we can modulate. I'm going to brake a little bit earlier than I normally do, just so I can get a feel for it. We'll see if we lock up. Alright, braking, and yeah, I feel like if I'm not slowing down enough, I can push a little bit harder, and I can kind of modulate that pressure there without it locking up. So I'm pretty sure with the V3s I would have locked up there if I'd tried to do what I just did. But anyway, bring it around again. See if we can start to build up a bit of speed here, and then we'll go and do a session with our 7 laps like we did before once I've gotten used to things. Okay. So we're 0.22 down at the moment on our after the first corner. That's on our PB of, what was it? 212.986 was our PB from the last session.
misshift there. Still getting used to the shifting in this car again. Even just the ability to modulate the throttle feels a little bit better as well. I don't know whether it's because we've got a bit more of a scale of deflection. We've got a little bit more travel. No, don't put it in the wall. A little skid. Don't think it's going to matter. Don't think it will damage the car. That's alright. So it definitely is a learning curve though. Like, I'm definitely slower at the moment. It's my skid from before. But I feel like the potential is definitely there to be faster already. Just in what I'm feeling through the pedals, all the little details and just that ability to make little fine-tuning adjustments as I go that I couldn't do before. So we'll bring this lap around, and what I'll do is I'll go and do 5 or 6 laps just to get used to things. When I'm back at the point where I feel like I'm sort of competent again, and then we'll go and we'll do the 7-lap session with the VRS running as well, and analyse to see how consistent we are. Okay, so there was a little bit of a lock up there. It didn't feel like it at the time. You see the skid marks as a telltale sign. Alright, so I'll do a couple more laps here now off camera, and then we'll come back and do our 7-lap stint.
So here we are now for my hot lap out of the 7-lap stint, which actually ended up being the second lap that I did. Now, it took me 6 laps in the first impressions segment of the video to get up to the same pace that I was doing with the V3s. As soon as I did a couple of lap times at around that 2 minutes 13 mark, I stopped and jumped into the session that we're in now. So this was the 8th lap that I'd done in total, including the first impressions as well as the first lap that I'd done after starting the 7-lap stint. So let's just watch this through now. I'm not going to talk through the lap, I'll just let you watch. Pay attention to the difference just in the amount of deflection that you're seeing in the brake pedal. So unfortunately I did get a little bit of a slide on here and lost about 15 hundredths. You can see there I lost it a little bit, but let's bring the lap to a close now. We'll jump into VRS and have a look at all the data from all 7 laps of both sessions, and then overlay the fastest laps as well to have a look at the data in more detail. So let's take a look at those 2 separate sessions now in the VRS Studio website. So we've got on the left-hand side here our target session, which is the session we did with the V3 pedals, and then our comparison session on the right-hand side, which was the set obviously with the HE pedals. So what we want to do first is have a look here. Our fastest lap was a 212.986 with the V3s.
Our fastest lap by comparison over here was a 2:12.326 with the HE Ultimates. But what is more important here is the consistency in terms of overall speed. So you can see my average lap time here was a 2:13.881. And again, over on the HE side, average lap time was a 2:12.999. So we were pretty much a full second faster on average over the 7 laps that we did with the HE pedals compared to the V3s, which I think is pretty darn impressive, considering that I did a lot of practice beforehand with the V3s and was very familiar with the circuit with those pedals before I did this. So if anything, I actually had an advantage with the V3s over the HE pedals. I only did 6 laps beforehand before jumping in and doing this session that you've just seen now. So let's scroll down and have a little bit more of a granular look at the lap times here individually. So lap 1, 2:15.993, 2:14.7, 2:13.9, 2:13.9. So those two were pretty close together, almost identical lap times. And we did a 2:13.6, 2:13.9 again, and a 2:12.98. So we did a couple of lap times here. Lap 8 we won't include because we rolled across the finish line with an empty fuel tank. But overall, we did 3 laps that were very, very close together, a 9.85, a 9.50, and a 9.54. And then we did 2 laps here as well. We did the 2:13.065 and the 2:12.986 that were consistent with each other as well. But you can see that we definitely did struggle with consistency over the course of the 7 laps in their entirety. Obviously, lap 1 and 2, the tyres were still coming up to temperature, so they're probably outliers as well. But we had a second variance within our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fast laps there. So let's move over now and have a look at the HE Ultimates by comparison now. So again, as we said before, average lap time was a full second faster than what we had with the other pedals, with the V3s. Interestingly, in this case, my fastest lap was actually lap 2, which is where the tyres were still coming up to temperature a little bit with the V3. So that was interesting. But scrolling down here, you can see we did a 2:12.3, a 2:13.3. So again, a second variance, 2:13.0, so about a second in it again. We ran out of fuel again at the end of lap 8, so we don't include that. But 2:13 flat again, very close together there. 2:12.5, which was also faster than my fastest best lap with the V3s. So all in all, lap 2, lap 4, and lap 5 were all faster than my fastest lap with the V3s, which I think is pretty telling. So interestingly, the consistency was about the same over the course of the 7 laps. Again, there was about a second variance there, but overall, we were on average a whole second faster over the course of the 7 laps than we were with the V3s. So let's actually take a look at our 2 fastest laps now from each session and overlay the data against each other. So we'll take lap 7 from here, lap 2 from here, and have a look at them compared to each other. Now you can see we have a dotted black line, which is our HE Ultimates lap, and then we have our blue line here, which is our V3 pedals laps. So we've got 2 flat lines here at the moment under throttle and brake because we're on the front straight. But if we go to Hell Corner, turn 1, wait for it to load here. Okay, so we'll play it back here. So you can see I'm braking a little bit sooner with the HE Ultimates, which is interesting, but I'm lifting off a little bit sooner as well. So I'm staying away from that maximum pressure. And that's again what I'm talking about with being able to modulate a little bit more. You're able to lift off and ease off a little bit more granularly than you can with the V3. So you can see I'm sort of sitting at maximum brake pressure a little bit longer there and then easing off a little bit later. So that is Hell Corner. Then we go up the back straight, Mountain Straight, and then into Griffin's Bend here. So again, you can see I'm modulating my brake input a little bit more there than I am with the V3s, which is exactly what I suspected once again. A little bit of difference there in the throttle input as well, but that's sort of negligible. And we'll move on to turn 3 and 4, so through the cutting. So there you can see there's actually quite a big difference in the braking there. Obviously, I've seen that I'm coming in a little bit too hot, and I've increased the brake pressure there to slow myself down a little bit more without locking up. But we didn't lock up, and you can see there the line that I took through the bend is actually slightly different as well. I took a slightly wider approach and tighter in through the apex in the HE Ultimate stint. We'll move on to through Quarry now. So here you can see there's only a tiny little touch on the brake there, only 5%. Now this scale here does vary depending on the overall load. So the maximum amount of input for each individual frame is set at the top line. So you can see that's 20% load there, whereas with the previous turns, it was a 40% load at the maximum. So just bear that in mind as well. So you can see I had a bit of a stab there up to 20% and then backed off again, but I'd say the variation here is probably more to do with a different line rather than the difference in the pedals. So again here, I'd say the variation that we're seeing is more to do with the line that I took in the stability of the car rather than the variance in pedals. But again, you can see I only touched the brake a little bit, only up to 2 and 4% there. So it was literally just a touch there. And this is kind of what I was talking about with just kind of having that subliminal sort of reassurance that your foot's on the brake. You got that little initial bit of sponginess there. So you kind of put your foot there and you rest your foot there. And I'd say that's probably all that was just me touching the brake just to know that it's there rather than to actually apply it. Whereas with the V3s, I was actually applying up to 6% brake there, which is a little bit more intentional, I would say, but not a whole lot in it there. So through to turns 11 through 15 now, so into the Skyline. So again, you can see I'm modulating my brake a lot more there. Less little stabs. We're going up to 40% brake pressure here. Throttle inputs are very, very similar again here. You can see not a whole lot of difference. A little bit more of a stab there with the V3s than the HEs. But again, you can see a lot more modular, a lot more fine adjustments there with the braking with the HE Ultimates than we had with the V3s. So through turns 16 and 18 now into Forest Elbow. So very, very, very similar here, actually. Not a whole lot in it at all. I'd say the difference there is completely negligible. Again, a little bit more variation in the brake pressure on the HE Ultimates, but very, very little in it whatsoever. I wouldn't say there's really any difference there whatsoever that is notable. So we'll go through, this is Conrod now, so we don't need to pay attention to that. It's going to be completely flat line as you would expect. Down into the Chase now, turn 20 and 22. So again, very similar. A little bit more variation, broke a little bit earlier with the HEs again, which is interesting considering that we were faster overall, but we're obviously maintaining a little bit more speed there as we're lifting off a little bit sooner with the braking. And again, you can see the V3s have got a little bit more of a digital input compared to the HEs. There's a little bit more variation in the brake pressure there as I'm feeling what's going on with the car. Throttles, again, very, very similar. So skipping forward to Murray's now, the final turn, turn 23. And again, you can see we've got that variation in brake pressure as I'm modulating my input compared to what we have with the V3s where it's a lot more flat line. So interesting little comparison there. I'd say a lot of the variation that we saw particularly through the Skyline is due to the difference in the lines that I took, but it's interesting to see that we've got more granular adjustments and more sort of modulation going on with the HEs pretty consistently throughout the entire lap, both on the brake as well as the throttle. You can see I am adjusting my inputs there a little bit on the throttle more than I'm doing with the V3s as well. So I wouldn't read too much into this, but I thought it'd be an interesting little comparison to put up on the screen for you guys so you can see exactly what's going on the data side. So there you have it, guys. That is a quick look at the HE Ultimates and the improvement that they've made in my driving pretty much instantly. And I'm looking forward to getting more stuck into these because I feel like I'm probably only just scratching the surface here. A second a lap over the course of 7 laps already is pretty darn impressive. So I'm definitely really excited about this. Not only has it increased my immersion, it's making me feel more connected to the car and more enjoyable to drive the car as well. But I think we've definitely demonstrated that I can go a lot faster with these pedals as well, which is the main thing. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think. And yeah, we'll definitely be doing a proper review of these once I've got the 80/20 rig all set up and I've had a chance to get my head around all of the fine-tuning adjustments. As I said, I think I'm only just scratching the surface at the moment, but I think we've definitely demonstrated in today's video the amount of potential that there is in these pedals. So leave a thumbs up if you found the video interesting. Make sure you're subbed and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss future videos. And if you want to help support the channel, obviously buying this gear does cost me a lot of money, so I really do appreciate that. There's links in the description below to ways that you can help out with that. We do also have the join button there as well if you'd like to sign up for a membership to help out the channel. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.